Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this hearing in this beautiful, beautiful spot. I've had several folks that we work with back in Washington, D.C. come and talk to me today about the reception that they have received here and the help that they have received from the National Park Service personnel especially. I want to make sure that I reiterate what they said, which is this is one of the very best groups they've ever had the opportunity to work with. And I know that logistically it's not easy to do what they have done, what you have done in terms of bringing all of this accoutrement here to the Jackson, set it up with this incredible backdrop that we couldn't paint and couldn't photograph to have the same kind of experience. I am honored to represent the state of Wyoming, and I'm very honored to be one of the members of the Natural Resources Committee. This is my second term in Congress, and I have definitely enjoyed working with the other members and addressing the issues that we have over the last 2.5 years. The Great American Outdoors Act, or GAOA, established the Mandatory Legacy Restoration Fund, which received $1.9 billion annually from fiscal year 2021 to fiscal year 2025. $9.5 billion in total for deferred maintenance needs of the National Park Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, Forest Service, BLM, and BIE. The National Park Service received $1.33 billion, or 70% of the overall funds annually. Instead of focusing narrowly on maintenance, however, I believe that the next iteration of GAOA should concentrate on projects that modernize our parks, enhance public access, improve infrastructure, and create new outdoor recreation opportunities. In light of the $10 billion increase in the National Park Service's deferred maintenance backlog over the past several years, Congress must enact reforms to ensure transparency, increase accountability, and wisely steward taxpayer dollars. In 2023, 325.5 million people visited national parks, spending an estimated $26.4 billion in local gateway regions, which supported 415,000 jobs and generated $55.6 billion in economic output. In 2024, more than 3.6 million people visited Grand Teton, spending an estimated $1.74 billion in Teton County, Wyoming. Tourism in Teton County that year supported approximately 8,480 jobs and generated $103.8 million in sales tax revenue. This morning I was reading the metrics for what has occurred so far this year, and it appears that 2025 is going to be another banner year for tourism in this part of the country. For fiscal year 24, Grand Teton had an estimated $343 million in deferred maintenance and repairs, plus $14 million of annual routine maintenance needs, while the park's infrastructure assets included 414 miles of trails, 33 campgrounds, and 151 miles of paved roads. To date, Grand Teton received $77.8 million in GAOA funding for 4 projects addressing maintenance on the Moose Wilson Road, rehabilitating cabins, replacing wastewater systems, and addressing safety issues at various buildings. Using a combination of GAOA funds, recreation fees, and general appropriation funding, Grand Teton also has 13 planned infrastructure projects totaling $33.1 million, which would enhance visitor experience by improving cabins and several trails. I do believe, however, that there is reform needed. There are significant concerns that the GAOA funds were not appropriately distributed between transportation and non-transportation projects. The statute requires 65% for non-transportation, but that did not adequately address some of our smaller parks and the needs that they have, and it disproportionately prioritized urban cities over our rural crown jewels such as the Grand Teton and Yellowstone National Park. For example, of the 10 largest pot projects funded under the GAOA from fiscal year 21 to 24, only 2 projects conspicuously located in Washington, D.C. and San Francisco, California, were unrelated to transportation or replacing wastewater systems. In other words, I think that it's time for a new iteration of the GAOA, and again, focusing on things such as visitor experience and making sure that we have the access that we need so that we can improve the access and the experience for all people who visit these absolutely beautiful places. Thank you to all of our witnesses for being here. Thank you for all of the other folks who have come to listen to what we're doing. It's exciting to be back in Wyoming, to bring my friends from all around the country. We appreciate your attention to all of this, and we look forward to the questions. Well, thank you. And one of the messages that has come through very loud and clear is the need to make sure that we are considering the future demands and needs of these programs in these national parks and these federal lands. I have historically been a water attorney and dealt with a lot of water issues throughout the state of Wyoming and Nebraska and Colorado. One of the things that I see when I look at our reservoirs, for example, Pathfinder Reservoir, Seminole, Glendo, when you look at these and you realize that they were constructed, some of them 100 years ago. Pathfinder Dam, I believe, closed around 1909, so it's over 100 years. And you think about what they invested in those facilities 100 years ago, and you realize that they really weren't building them for themselves. They were building them for us. And that is exactly the way that we need to look at the programs and the projects for what we're talking about here with GOA. I recognize that. We constantly have to be thinking about what we're going to be doing with our infrastructure to make sure that the next generation and the next generation after that is able to enjoy these incredible resources that we have. Superintendent Jenkins, I want to thank you for your service to the park, to our state, and to the country. And in your testimony, you mentioned the need to rejuvenate the infrastructure to support access for the remainder of the 21st century. Updating GOA to modernize and enhance access to the parks is also a focus of this committee. I think that's been clear with the comments that have been made today. And it is part of the reason that we are here. Based on your experience with GOA funds over the past few years, what recommendations do you have for us? And are there any lessons learned from the field that Washington, D.C. policymakers should know? We are here to learn from you. So please give us what information and advice you have in terms of reauthorizing GOA.
Representative Hageman, thank you very much for the question. I appreciate that. I think there are many lessons that could be learned, and I think the National Park Service and the Department of Interior would be very interested in working through the technical assistance steps to be able to provide that feedback as legislation is crafted. A few suggestions. I think that, as Leslie Madsen said, is creating the authorities for us to be able to leverage public-private funds more effectively would enable us to both stretch the federal dollars further, as well as also enable us to move more expeditiously and efficiently to be able to plan and complete projects. Those partnerships are ways that we can be able to help prepare for the future. I think the work that is going on in terms of exploring how to streamline our contracting processes and procurement processes would greatly benefit folks in the field to be able to implement projects more quickly. Those are two key areas. But I know that my compatriots elsewhere in the field have an abundance of ideas, and through the technical assistance program, we can would like to surface those.
Well, my office and yours has worked well together over the last 2.5 years, and I would greatly appreciate it if you would provide that information to us so that we have a written document and we can go through and prioritize the ideas that you have. Ms. Calder, I'm going to turn to you. As you know, in Wyoming, we say that tourism is one of our 3 legacy industries alongside energy and agriculture. And the work your organization and the business community does definitely drives that point home. In your testimony, you mentioned steps your organization has taken to manage the guest journey end to end, and this includes modernization efforts. As part of a GOA reauthorization effort, we are considering reforms to make it stronger and build from lessons that we have learned over the last 5 years. I'm going to ask for your recommendations as well. What modernization efforts could federal partners pursue to pair with the modernization efforts the tourism and business sector are implementing?
Thank you, Representative Hagerman. It's a great question, and it's something that we've learned both through the Travel and Tourism Board and through our partnerships with federal agencies as well as local hospitality organizations. I think it's important to remember as we look to the future that the visitor doesn't know who owns what. They are looking at an all-encompassing experience, and I think one of the areas that tourism has struggled, and I would encourage, is investment in technology for planning ahead, for platforms, for reservations, and perhaps even managing capacities. This has become a standard in many areas of tourism. The guest is familiar with this type of management. Additionally, I think there are different things we can do to ensure that when the guest arrives, they have information, modern digital communications, as you saw on the boards there. At the Travel and Tourism Board, we not only encourage visitation and welcome visitors, but we want to make sure visitors understand what it's like to be here in our ecosystem, whether it's how far to stay away from wildlife, whether it's to make sure to put out your campfire. That's another thing to learn that we could bring into the modern era. Additionally, some of the ambassador programs we've been able to fund through the Travel and Tourism Boards has been really supplemental in supporting the experience guests have, whether they are people at campsites or in dispersed areas in the national forests. We've been able to have boots on the ground for people to really communicate directly with visitors, and this is really important for how they act and the impressions they get when they visit. But I think the needs are great. The amount of funds we have has been really instrumental in mitigating visitor impacts as well, whether it's through public transportation, whether it's through finding creative solutions for parking, as you all saw this morning. That's definitely a challenge the Park Service and the businesses locally are facing. As we see increased demand for visitors to come to these magnificent places, we're going to have to think about how they're getting there and how we can best ensure they have a world-class experience when they arrive.
Thank you very much for that information. I yield back.